have appointed Mr. Russell Ursula as Secretary General of the Ministry of Justice after having undergone a thorough recruitment process. Mr. Ursula, a former police inspector who holds a master's degree in law and another in public policy and administration, possesses over 20 years of experience in related functions. Mr. Ursula's professional career includes an 11-year stint as the Deputy Director of the Netherlands Antilles Security Services, the VNA. He also spent 6 years as the Director of the Ministry of Justice of the former Netherlands Antilles, before taking up the position of Deputy Executive Director of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, where he remained until moving to Canada in 2007. Mr. Ursula worked with the Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Units and further enhanced his skill set in the fields of governance, risk, and compliance. His expertise includes, among others, organizational enhancement, policy development, and compliance and risk management. I'm elated to have Mr. Ursula join the team, and I would expect great things from him as well. In addition, I have also, as of yesterday, appointed Dr. Anders Albin Cayley to the position of Interim Prison Director after having undergone a thorough recruitment process which started in mid-2018. Mr. Cayley has a master's degree in law and has actively pursued an MBA in educational management as well as a degree in business information technology. Mr. Cayley has accumulated a wealth of managerial experience with over 30 years in various management functions in the areas of security, justice, and vocational training. Mr. Cayley has served over 15 years in the Army of the Dutch Kingdom. He started as a second lieutenant and climbed into the ranks of captain. In civilian life, he was amongst others director of the FIFIX Vocational Training Center. He was also assistant director of the security and operations at the Bonfouture prison, section head of the police affairs at the Department of Justice, acting head of the security services of the previous Netherlands Antilles, and head of the Bureau Military Affairs. Mr. Cayley was selected based on a shared vision and his ability to realize such, creating a true rehabilitation institute for prisoners through education and vocational skills that would provide for seamless integration into society after having been incarcerated. As a side note as well, an MOU with NIPA is currently being reviewed and will be signed very soon. I've had meetings with a representative of NIPA as well as the MIC, and a site visit was also conducted, so we're looking forward to that, hopefully this week, if not by next week. But on the backdrop of the responsibility, as Minister of Justice, the detention facilities for St. Martin are operational and adherent to international regulations and standards. The appointment of this interim prison director is to ensure improved operations, to oversee the works, and to be the change manager needed in the process is vital. I am pleased to have Mr. Cayley on board and believe that he will be a valuable contribution to the ministry. It is the aim to ensure that his vast wealth of knowledge will be transferred to management to prepare them for their leading role. While Mr. Cayley's background is in security and operations at the Curazao Bonfouture prison, it is our intention to continue improving the security at the Point Blanche prison for staff as well as for the inmates. We can only do this when everyone shows up to work and we finalize the recruitment of the 20 new prison guards that are needed. Following this press briefing, I will have the honor of swearing in more staff of the prison as well as those who work throughout the ministry. That will take place on the 4th floor right after this. And in an hour or two, I will be in Parliament as well regarding the 3 draft national ordinances. One is the national ordinance to amend the national ordinance obligation to report cross-border money transfers. 2, the national ordinance to combat money laundering and terrorism financing. And 3, de national ordinance meldpunt ongebruikelijke transacties. The fact that St. Martin is not in compliance with 40 FATF recommendations may lead to a public statement that can be issued by the FATF preliminary meetings which will take place next May, or which will take place in May in Trinidad and Tobago. To prevent this, government has worked on the amendment of the anti-money laundering and counterterrorism financing laws to prevent the issuance of a public statement. This because a public statement places a country on the list of high-risk or non-cooperative jurisdictions due to its non-compliance with the 40 recommendations of the FATF. This would obligate 205 member countries and jurisdictions of the FATF to monitor and, if deemed necessary, sever all financial relations with that country within a period of 6 months to a year to protect their financial systems. This would be devastating for St. Martin's financial and socioeconomic system. After everything that St. Martin has been through since the passing of Hurricane Irma, we cannot, and our economy cannot afford any negative listing. These laws are not partisan and are solely for the general interest of St. Martin, locally, regionally, and internationally. Should any member of Parliament have any reservations after having the additional time to review these laws, I would hope that their objections be reflected in amendments to the laws rather than voting against them, with a clear understanding of the consequences of their actions and the negative impact it will have for the economy.
It's been said that behind every door, possibility awaits. How much possibility depends on which door you open first. Every day, we help our customers discover the possibilities in their lives. It all starts with a conversation. Scotiabank. Discover what's possible.
GEBE has been faithfully serving the communities of St. Martin, powering your home and our economy. Come rain or shine, our qualified team of professionals are working hard 24 hours a day to provide you and your family with safe, reliable electricity and water. We use the latest technologies and test our products daily to maintain the highest international standards. Our friendly staff is always there to assist you, whether in person, over the phone, or online. We are committed to constantly improving our products and services, making them more efficient, effective, and environmentally friendly to serve you better today and our next generation of clients tomorrow. GEBE, powering a brighter future.
Our friend Megawati is here with tips to save you energy. 1. Turn your airco temperature up. 2. Use a ceiling fan instead. 3. Buy energy-saving products. Save some green with NV.
The ministry has indicated that we intend to pursue the establishment of a gaming authority. We also care about economic fairness. However, the issue and answer given in the previous round was related to informing and making persons aware of their role and responsibility to make informed, better, and wiser decisions, to distinguish between wants and needs without telling or deciding for them, as well as demonstrating that resources are scarce and choices have to be made. When we get to the point of asking and or suggesting that one prefers to put resources and a budget into efforts that cost money instead of putting money into activities that lead to more economic activities, growth and income for the government, which is needed to finance activities that don't primarily generate income. By this is meant to divert funds from events that brings major income to the country to establish a calibration department is to suggest that what is being referred to as a decision this minister does not agree with, and I have come to the realization that we will never agree in this budget that this can be done in this manner. As mentioned, and I would like to reiterate that when the circumstances improve, that we can and may explore the possibility to expand or establish a calibration department in the future. At the end of the day, many persons have choices, and we as a government also have to make choices of how how we prefer and intend to allocate our scarce resources. Questions posed by the Honourable Member of Parliament, Mr. Franz Richardson. Issuance of T's and G's seem like this government has a new policy or is in the process of changing the policy concerning T's, G's, taxis and buses. Clarity is needed based on the enormous number of T's and G's that have been given out in 1 year compared to any previous years. Was there a policy change? This information was previously given in response to the Honourable Member of Parliament, Mr. Duran. Due to the lifting of the moratorium in 2016 and 2017, an influx of requests at that time were received and processed. The lifting of the moratorium at that time did not include the taxi licenses, which then resulted in requests coming in for T's and G's. Additionally, once the requirements are met by the applicant, the request must be given once they comply with the requirements. For this reason, the moratorium has now been put back in place to prevent the market from being flooded. Clarity is needed on the issue of the gaming companies not being able to open or hold bank accounts. MP needs to hear the vision or the plan from the Minister on how this will be resolved. This answer was previously given. It is not up to the Minister of TIAT, but the Minister of Finance to tackle this issue, which has been provided for his response. Question asked previously, you are the shareholder rep for the airport. Government took a decision to dissolve the holding company and to give the shares to whomever is lending to the airport. Has COM taken a decision on that? No. Discussion or decision of that nature was taken in the Council of Ministers in terms of the selling of the shares. What is the Minister's vision plan for the tourism product? How does the Minister see the revitalization and rebranding and re-imaging following Hurricane Irma? How does government view fixing the Phillipsburg area? The vision of this Minister of TIAT is that we understand the current economic conditions and are keenly aware of the circumstances. Hence, the Ministry is working tirelessly to facilitate the reopening of the airport, seeking the attraction and the establishment of U.S. pre-clearance, attracting airlift, the financing for the airport, the reopening of hotels is being encouraged, the supporting of fiscal reform, the promotion of events to ensure that St. Martin's economy and its economic activity continues, the controlling of businesses and the encouraging of all parties to assist and support government in these challenging times of our economy by means of keeping the island clean, shopping around, reducing crime, encouraging law-abiding citizens, both young and old, and in order that the economy and the people of St. Martin can return to the days of glory and pre-Irma. With respect to the branding, the destination has identified with the northern side committed to the MOU that the areas for branding will be 1. French, Dutch, one island, two destinations, many cultures. 2. Culture, heritage, history. 3. Culinary. 4. Luxury, villa vacations, wedding, honeymoons, and food lovers. And 5. Island hopping. While the above mention outlines the vision, the reality of many economies is that the capital does not automatically serve as the nightlife and or tourist capital of the country. For example, the nightlife and tourist area of Miami is mostly the Miami Beach area and not downtown Miami. Therefore, the reality is that market developments have considered Phillipsburg as a commercial district, mainly for retail businesses with restaurants catering mostly for cruise tourists, while the Simpson Bay area has developed into the tourist area and nightlife for both tourists and visitors. Key areas for our tourism development: the reopening of the airport, the rebuilding of hotels, market research and data collecting, revision Tourism Master Plan 2020 to 2030 midterm plan, diversification of the tourism product, maritime trade industry, cultural tourism, sports tourism, business tourism, MICE market, special events, creative industry, and the orange economy, marketing and public relations, product development and visitor relations, driving tourism volume, for instance, Airbnb, special events, marine, yachting, including cruise conversion.
Hey, Ma. How you doing? You busy?
I hear, just paying some bills, taking care of business, you know what it is?
I know, you're doing your online banking.
I don't have to stand in those long lines to pay bills. I can transfer when I want. I can check my account wherever. It's like the bank open 24/7. I even here checking the statement right now as we're talking. How's Miami?
Well, that's why I'm calling. I'm finishing up a few songs now, but I'm afraid that studio time might be more than I thought. And I was wondering if I could get some help with some funds, and I could pay you back as soon as I get back to St. Martin.
Let me check my account. How much you need?
I think 500 should be enough.
I can transfer it to you while online. Direct from me to you. No problem.
Great. Thank you so much, Ma. I'll get online with Wib now.
Alright, darling. You know who you're for?
I need to know who you're for.
Contact Wib today for your complete personal online banking experience. Available for all mobile devices. The Wynwood Islands Bank, now your online banking partner in progress.
Who you're for.
One of them, Madam Chair, is related to the tourism master plan that the minister mentioned. We also see it in the policy document, page 62. Well, I use the term policy document loosely because I think it's very lacking. However, Madam Chair, what I find I didn't get an answer on is what is the source of funding to cover the cost of the master plan? Because in the budget as it is right now, there is no budget post that I've seen specifically for the master plan. In the original budget, like I mentioned to the Minister of Finance, in the original capital expenditures for TIAT, it was completely different from what I'm seeing now. So the one that was sent in November to what is now, magically three months later, the items such as Phillipsburg beautification that was mentioned, that just disappeared from the Kapitaldienst. The tourism master plan just magically disappeared. And then, of course, now the finance ministry has 85 million guilders for themselves. So I need to get some clarification on, if you're talking about tourism master plan and we're talking about Phillipsburg improvement, yeah, well, it's nice talk, but how are you going to pay for it? Because it's not here. It's in your policy, but it's not in your capital expenditure. So we need explanation as to why this was not properly budgeted for within the Kapitaldienst, or maybe it's, I see you only have 100,000 guilders for consultants. I can imagine that's far from enough to do a 10-year tourism master plan. So I really need some proper clarification on the reality of how the minister is going to be able to execute this. Because right now it doesn't sound like it's achievable based on this budget. Madam Chair, there was also with regards, the minister mentioned various events, the subsidies, SXM Festival, Carnival, etc. My question, what I would like clarified, Madam Chair, is where are we so far within the year in terms of these entities, particularly the Carnival Foundation, the Regatta, SXM Festival, and I see a few others there. Have they received payment, yes or not, and where is that so far? The other question that we also asked, I believe actually it was MP France asked for this question as well in terms of agriculture. Agriculture, as surprising as it may be to some, that actually falls under the purview of the Ministry of TIAT. The question was, what is the policy related to the management of any agricultural activities from the Ministry of TIAT? Because in your policy document, there's absolutely no mention of agriculture in the policy side of the budget. However, there is a post, and I think it's a very skimmed down post of just 50,000 guilders, at least. Well, you know, it is something. But then we want to know 25,000 guilders or whatever. I think it's 50,000 guilders actually. But then, okay, if it's there, but what is the policy? What is the plan for these funds? We need some clarification on that as well, Madam Chair. Also, Madam Chair, there was two topics that are kind of interconnected. It's related to the what the minister is talking about with the permits, you know, Kimsha and the vendors there. But then there's also ties into another point that I've brought up, which was a general question to all ministries, and I would like this question to be addressed, which is related to Mullet Bay. And I tie this into permits for this reason. The minister mentioned in his answering that they're creating a policy or such to be able to manage the permits that are given on beaches like Simpson Bay Beach. Let me correct that. The Simpson Bay Beach and Mullet Bay Beach. However, Madam Chair, it appears that this situation, as a matter of fact, there's a situation happening right now where a local is trying to get a permit for an event at Mullet Bay and is getting a whole runaround. My question, and Madam Chair, I need clarification on this permit process. The Ministry of TIAT, what permit do you give for someone to be able to do an event on a beach such as Mullet Bay? And secondly then, how are you able to coordinate with the other aspects? So justice has to give a permit. The fire department, in the case of this event, a bonfire, they have to get a permit. Because my thing is that if the Ministry of TIAT has already said, you have the economic permission to go on this beach and sell drinks from this hour to that hour, but then now you're getting to run around at Justice or at Fire Department or at VROMI, etc. I think there's a huge disconnect here. And that is a source of a big part of the problem when you talk about the boot holders on the Pondfield Road, when you talk about the boot holders in Kimsha. This is a big part of the, in Simpson Bay. This part of the bottleneck becomes a huge issue. But then I need the Ministry of TIAT. If you are given permits for this, is it just simply, well, we just kind of throw up our hands and say, well, we do our part? Or is there some form of follow-up to ensure that the person that is given this permit is actually able to execute the event ultimately? I think it's a very sad situation, Madam Chair. And in addition to that, I want to know specifically with Mullet Bay, is it the situation, and I guess this is a rhetorical question because I would hope that this is not happening, but when someone asks for a permit to go on Mullet Bay Beach, do they have to consult with the tower's management? Because I can confirm several people, it might not be due to TIAT, but are told you have to call tower's management first. And I would hope that the Ministry of TIAT is not engaging in those type of activities. As a matter of fact, I would be very sure, considering the credentials of Ms. Pantaflet, that she wouldn't allow that, but it's happening in other ministries. And I don't want that to spill over into this.
To the minister.
So the question is, does the Ministry of TIAT, when someone's seeking a permit for Mullet Bay, are you informing people to go to the tower's management to seek permission first? You need to get that clearly answered.
Over the weekend, there was a sporadic combustion at the landfill, which resulted in a small fire. The flare-up was extinguished, and efforts have intensified to keep these flare-ups to a minimum. However, as is customary for this time of year, the island is currently experiencing a dry spell, and the landfill, like many other areas on our island, is hot and dry. Just earlier this month, the fire department issued a warning to residents to be extra careful in their activities to limit accidental bushfires, or to prevent accidental bushfires. I think that this is important to note that since government has taken control of the management of the landfill in January, there has been no major fires, as we have implemented several temporary measures aimed at subduing flare-ups. We have closed the landfill to the public in the evening hours there is 24/7 security, and due to the dry spell, we have significantly increased the amount of fill used to cover the garbage. Throughout the evening hours on Monday, 1,200 tons of sand was deposited, and last night on Tuesday, an estimated 2,000 tons were placed. This week alone, the Department of Infrastructure estimates that it will place 5,000 to 7,000 cubic tons of sand as fill. I also have an update on the emergency debris management project of the Recovery Trust Fund. Last week, there were a series of progress meetings with the representatives of the World Bank and the National Recovery Program Bureau. At the meetings, one of the pivotal discussions centered around the so-called red zone next to the dump. This zone was initially designated as such after an inspection early in the introductory process identified an area on the eastern slope with a potential fault line.